Once we have our Run Graphics game template set up, we're going to go ahead and add in those other objects that we had talked about back in our slide deck. Remembering that in our slides we decided that our game object was going to be the name of our parent class that all of our children classes were going to inherit from. It was going to contain 4 variables. We would then need to put in its constructor, and for right now we'll just leave a blank method that we'll call collide. So let's go ahead and add that one in. We're going to make a new Java class. We will call it GameObject. And inside of GameObject, we need 4 variables. We will need an X, a Y, a size, and a color. All right, and so then we need to make our constructor. So remember, with objects, in order to make a constructor, you need public, and then nothing else except for the exact same name as the name of the overall class. So this needs to say public GameObject, and then we will put in any of those instance variables that we would want some other user or programmer to be able to pass in for what all game objects will have. So we would likely want the user to pass in with where our object is going to start from, unless we always want all of our objects to start at 0, 0, which doesn't make sense for our case. So we'll want the user to pass in some X value for the X location. They will then pass in a Y value. They likely will also tell us the size of the object that they want us to have. If we're going to have it be, we're assuming in this case, all of our game objects are rectangles, well, I guess squares, so that the size is going to be both the width and the height for us. And then finally, a last one of color. And now we need to set these. And because I've used the same name of the variable inside of these instance variables as I do for the variables of the object, we're going to use the keyword this. So we say this.x, which is referring to, notice how it highlighted it for us, it's referring to that purple one right there, and that's going to be equal to x, which is that one that it's highlighting right there. Gosh, I love IntelliJ. Same case for this .y. It's then going to be talking about that purple y value that's right here, and that's going to equal this y value that's over here off to the side. Oh, it didn't highlight that one as nicely, but we'll keep going. Same with this .size, and that will be equal to, well, size that got passed in over there. And then finally this .color, and that's going to equal the color that the user will pass in, or the programmer will pass in. Okay, so that sets all of those variables that we need. So this is a full working constructor for us now in this moment. And then the only other thing that we're going to have is we're going to leave an empty method, public boolean, collide. For right now, it's not going to pass anything in, and all we need to do is say return false. We need some kind of return statement because we said it's going to be a boolean, so we're just going to leave it as a blank. It always returns false. We'll come back and edit this in a later video. Okay, so now we've got our basic parent function that is GameObject. So we can then from there use our GameObject to create the 3 child classes that we're going to use. The first one that I'm going to make is I will make one that is for gems. You can choose to have this say gem singular, gem plural, you name it, whatever you'd like. I'm going to call it gems. And because we know it is going to be a child function, or a child of the game object, we're going to say that it extends from GameObject. Oops, what did I press? GameObject. And right away that's going to highlight in red. That's okay. Reason being is right now it's upset because you don't have any kind of a constructor. You have yet to say like, hey, I want to use the same one as before. So let's head back over and figure out what exactly we wanted our gems to do. Back in our slide deck, we saw that we wanted our gems to inherit everything from GameObject, but then have 1 extra variable for increasing the life amount. Okay, so let's do that. So that means, remember that every class always needs to have some kind of a constructor. So we're going to, again, have public gems, should be the exact same word. And when we were creating a gem, we would, well, be passing in the same things. We would give it an X, give it a Y, give it a size, and give it a color. Just like game objects do. But now, instead of trying to go through and reset these all again, what we can say is, hey, that superclass, that special parent function that already exists, already has all 4 of these things being passed in, it's already got a working constructor. I'm not going to do the work again to reset those. Let's let the parent function do that work for me. So go use my parent function GameObjects constructor in this case. Now, the only other thing that we said existed for gems, it inherited everything from GameObject. The only other thing that it did differently is it had 1 extra variable for increasing the life amount. So I'm going to call that one, in our case, I don't know, I'll call it the value of the gem. Because then we can have more valuable gems or less valuable gems. And for right now, let's just say that we'll set value for all of the gems right now to be, I don't know, 2. So whenever a player runs into a gem, they get 2 extra lives. And that's it for gems. Quick, short, easy, nice code we've got there. So we're going to do the same thing. Now we're going to make our, well, let's make our player object next. Player also is going to extend from GameObject. And again, it's going to get mad at me initially because I have yet to make a constructor. So we're going to say public player. And again, it contains the same 4 instance variables being passed in by the user or the programmer. And again, we're going to say, hey, parent function knows what's going on there, so let's let it do it for us. And then the other thing that we've got for player is some method that we're going to call reset that will reset the player's position. So we'll just call this one, it'll be a public void reset. And for now, we'll just say that it sets the X to be, we'll set it to 0, 0. Maybe we'll change that later. Maybe we'll want that to be something that gets passed in later. But for now, we'll just say that that's what our reset does. It sets our X and our Y back to 0 to reset that position. Okay, great. So now we've got our player object fully made. And so our last one that we're going to make here is our baddies. You can call these again whatever you like. For me, they are going to be baddies. Again, they extend that parent class GameObject. We're going to steal the constructor again one last time using that keyword super. All right, so there we go. We've stolen the constructor one last time, so now we've got baddies initialized, and let's check back over to see what other things did our baddies use. Our baddies inherited from GameObjects. They should have a variable for decreasing the life amount, and then a method to move along the specified path. Okay, so they're gonna also have one other variable that, I don't know, we'll call damage. Just the damage that they do, and for right now, we'll set the damage level to be 1. We'll let the baddies start off weaker. As the levels move on, they can get stronger. And then after that, we need one other method. This one I'm going to call move. And for right now, I'm going to leave it as a void method and leave it blank. In a later video, we will come back to talk about having that method move in the way that we want it to. Okay, so now we've got all of our objects set up. Let's make sure that we can see them on our board and that everything is working the way we want it to. So all we're gonna do now is we're gonna run back over to our graphics game really quick. Here's what we're gonna do. I'm going to, up here, create one of each type. So I'm gonna say that I'm gonna have 1 gems, and I'll call it G1. It will be a new gem for me. And remember now, I have to pass in 4 things. IntelliJ reminds me exactly what those 4 things are. So for right now, let's say I'm going to put the gem, I don't know, 200, 200. It's going to be size 30. And its color, well, I'll let it be, what were my gems? The gems are the red things for me on this game. So we'll let it be the red things. Okay, so now we've got a gem object. We're now going to make our player object. And that'll be a new player for us. And our player is going to start at 0, 0. It'll be size 50. We'll make the player nice and big so we can see it. And then it will use the color. We'll let the player be green like it was last time. And then finally, we've got a baddie we want to make. We'll call that one B1. And it will be at, I don't know, let's put it at 500, 500, well, 500, 200 maybe. We'll let the size of it be also quite large, so let's let it be 70. And our baddies will continue to be blue for right now. Oops. All right, so now we've created those those 3 objects. So now inside of my draw method, here's what I'm gonna do. I'm going to set my background color just for right now to be black. And now what I wanna do is I wanna say, draw in a rectangle that has the X position of G1, the Y position, and then G1's size. And right now, as I'm typing these all in, I'm seeing that they're giving me errors, and the reason being is because I didn't set these variables the way I wanted to. So I need to take this little part right here, copy that up here. Remember that we've got to declare these variables outside of our setup method. So let's do that. Player P1 and baddies B1. All right, so then inside of here, we don't have to redeclare the type. We just have to set the values of these variables inside of our setup method. All right, there we go. So now we can see no longer getting errors there. So we've created a rectangle. The one other thing that I want to do is, because I want my rectangle to be the right color for the gem, we're going to go ahead and say we're going to fill with G1.color. And now we should see the gem show up at the location that we want, in the size that we want, with the color that we want. So we're going to do that same thing for the player and for the baddie. P1.x, P1.y, and then we're gonna P1.size twice over. Remember, the inside of that rectangle command, the thing that we are passing in, it's a little bit less intuitive IntelliJ right now. When it fills that in for us, what it actually says is float A, float B, float C, float D, which is not actually all that helpful for us. What this really does is float A is X position, float B is Y position, C and D are then the width and the height, respectively. None of them are talking about the color. We fill the color in a separate place. So X position, Y position, width, and height, which are going to be the same for us because we're for right now going to have square baddies, square shapes for everything right now. All right, so let's go ahead and try this. When I press play, I run this, I can see that I've got a player object that is green in that top right because we set it to be 0, 0. I've got a gem object at 200, 200, and I've got a baddie sitting over here at 500, 200. So it's working. We can see those objects appearing in such a way, and we will mess around with moving in the next week.